All right, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. In the interest of time, I'm just gonna get rolling here. Folks are still kind of trickling in, but thank you all for joining Midtown Alliance and the City of Atlanta today to learn more about the 15th Street Area Lit Lane project. Midtown Alliance works as an implementation partner with the City of Atlanta to make the district a livable, lovable community for those who work, live, and play here. And to that end, we're constantly working to improve our streets and make them more accommodating to the needs of all. So the 15th Street Lit Lane will provide a critical east-west connection on the northern end of the district. Since our last public meeting about this project in December, we've been working to update the concept with all of the community input and interests in mind. We're really excited to share that updated concept during today's meeting. While we are committed to building this project, it is important to note that it's currently only funded through construction design. We hope to complete those plans in the coming months and then move on to identifying funding sources for implementation in the future. So the run of show today, we'll spend about 15 minutes going over each segment of the design. We're gonna have a little bit of emphasis on the Peachtree Place and 15th Street intersection. And then once we wrap that up, we're gonna move into the bulk of our time, which will be spent on community questions from everybody. We do have a large group today, so what we're asking everyone to do is just to submit your questions into the question and answer box that you can see on your panel, I think probably at the bottom of your screen. We are going to be monitoring the questions as they come in, and so as we go through the presentation, questions that are kind of clarification for the slide that we're currently on will likely be addressed in a moment, and then the rest will be addressed when we move into the question and answer portion of our meeting today. So with that, I am going to turn it over to everybody. Sorry, I'm Julie Wells, a project manager with Midtown Alliance. I'm going to turn it over to Addie with Tool. We're also joined by Tom, he's with Tool, and Chris from Jacobs, and we have Dan Horgan on the line from Midtown Alliance as well. So Addie, over to you.
Great, thank you, Julie. And thanks for the introduction. I noticed that I see several names on here that I've seen not only with smaller conversations with the community, but also from the last virtual meeting back in November, December, which seems like light years ago. So again, quickly going to go over the why and the where. Most of this, in fact, all of this existing condition analysis can be found online. So if you want to do the deep dive, please go there where you can do the deep dive. And we spent time in the previous virtual open house going over that. So as Julie mentioned, this is really focused along the corridor, but really kind of an emphasis on the 15th and Peachtree Circle interchange. So we're looking at how do we provide that safe connection, that east-west connection in the north part of Midtown. So that's not just for bike users, but that's also for pedestrian users as well. It plays an important connection in the district. So most of you should know what lit lanes are, light individual transport lanes. We went over this in previous conversations, but it's really bikes and other modes that we really want to highlight. So it's the short trips, the last mile connections, human powered or electric vehicle uses as well. It's a great tool to use. Just think of it as, you know, expanded bike, upgraded bike facilities that we have through here. This is what they look like. They can take on various forms. Again, they could be on street, as this image to the left highlights. They could be at sidewalk level. They can happen in all sorts of conditions, urban and suburban conditions for lit lanes. So why are we doing this project? Well, there's several big initiatives that are happening just citywide and Midtown Alliance. So you might have heard recently the mayor has passed 25 miles per hour on local roads. This is in direct response to some of the feedback that we're getting and some of the data that we see within the city of Atlanta. Traffic death rates in Atlanta are high, and especially when you look at comparable cities. And that's why the One Atlanta Strategic Transportation Plan that was adopted really emphasized this Vision Zero approach, which looks at traffic safety as a growing health problem. So building on that Vision Zero initiative, the city is really undertaking a way to how do we kind of rebalance our streets and make them safe, not just for cars, but for bikes and peds as well. It's not just at the city level, but it's also at Midtown Alliance. This was a survey that came out in 2019 that really highlighted what the trends were we were seeing in the community. And the takeaway from this was walking and biking and transit usage is really the focus of residents in Midtown. That's where we need to kind of implement our infrastructure and really think about how do we provide safe facilities for all users. So that's where this project comes into effort. This is from their previous transportation master plan. So it's not just pulled out of the sky. This was actually in the work program from the transportation master plan that was adopted. And as you can see, and hopefully you can see my cursor, you have the magenta dashed lines, you have which are planned separated bike facilities. You have the blue line, which is on-street bike facilities to date. You have this planned shared use path. So we're really looking at how do we provide a safe connection from Piedmont Park all the way over to the Arts Center MARTA station. Again, these are a lot of the projects that are happening. Midtown's got a lot going on. It's really great to see the thought and care taken at looking at how do we make these streets not just for cars, but for people. So that doesn't mean eliminating cars, but it means looking at vehicles, looking at bikes, looking at peds, looking at people, where they're going, where are the potential conflict points for the users as well. So this project took a look at 3 corridors. 15th Street was the name of the project, but we wanted to make sure we took a look at 14th Street and 16th Street. And from our analysis, 15th Street was really the preferred alternative for a variety of reasons. And I would request that if you have any kind of deep dive on the analysis that we did, you can go to the website and I'll be there in a second. We did notice that 15th Street is that direct connection. We've heard from a lot of folks that they want that direct connection from Piedmont to the MARTA station and places in between. There's also obviously a wide right-of-way. So part of our effort is really looking at how do we do this quickly within the right-of-way that we have. So we don't want to buy new right-of-way. It delays the project. So where can we put bike infrastructure to date? And how do we improve safety? The Peachtree Circle and 15th Street intersection was one of those intersections that had a high level, had a significant number of crashes at the northern end of the intersection. So right here. So how can we use this project to help improve safety for all users? So again, you can go find the existing conditions report. It's on the Midtown website. It looks at the community engagement summary. We did an origins and destination analysis of all 3 corridors that we looked at: transit operations, corridor overviews, a multimodal analysis, and recommended design considerations. We did spend a lot of time. I believe we did at least 2 rounds of some major stakeholders along the corridor, and then a deeper dive with some residents after our virtual workshop. So where are we in the process? Well, right now we're still in the community engagement process. We are in our 2nd virtual open house, but from here we will move into schematic design. And from there, we will be able to let Midtown Alliance know how much funding is actually needed for this project and who are the kind of key partners. So the implementation of this project is still to be determined, but that is something that we're hoping to flesh out as we move through into schematic design. So now I'm going to switch into the revised concept. Again, most of you have seen this before, so I'm going to move somewhat quickly through the facility types and the modes and really pause on the 15th Street Peachtree Circle intersection. These are the 3 facility types that we'll be seeing along the corridor. So we have the protected lit lanes, which we know are the preferred type of facility for all users and all abilities. It really gives that safety, especially folks and families coming from Piedmont Park and going to the Woodruff Art Center. Having those facilities are there. Lit lanes buffered from parking. This is what is happening currently today on Peachtree Circle in Ansley Park, north of 15th Street. So Peachtree Circle already has a similar condition. And then shared lanes. While shared lanes aren't our preferred alternative, there are places where there is a pinch point, and recognizing the fact that we want to stay within the right of way, there is a couple areas where we highlight the shared lanes. So I'm going to start at West Peachtree and move from West Peachtree east towards Piedmont. Most of you know that 15th Street, there's going to be a 15th Street extension, and part of that extension is they will have lit lanes in either direction. Those will be sidewalk level facilities. So we wanted to build on that existing effort that is moving through the process and continue to provide bike facilities that are buffered from the vehicle travel lane. So what you'll find as I move through this presentation, you have the orange dot, those are movements going eastbound, and the blue dot is movements going westbound. We will have conflict markings along the corridor to let folks know where there's potential conflict points with bikes and peds. So again, one dedicated eastbound lane for vehicles, one dedicated right turn lane, and one dedicated through lane westbound to line up with the 15th Street extension project. Again, this is just a closer look at that 15th Street extension that will be coming online. You will have a dedicated left turn lane to go north on West Peachtree and one lane in each direction, along with sidewalk level lit lanes. As we move closer to Arts Center Way, we know, as we've watched when we did our corridor walk, and for those of us who hang around the MARTA station can see the number of pedestrians that move through the space. Part of this issue and part of our design concept is to really give places for people to be. So if bikes, where they should be, where should pedestrians be, and where should cars be? Giving that legibility so that folks know where folks are supposed to be, regardless of the mode. We are suggesting an RFB, so that's a rapidly flashing beacon at the intersection of Arts Center Way and 15th Street. So it retains the crosswalks. It adds a 2-lane bike staging for those folks that want to go to Arts Center Way. We did look at Arts Center and 16th as an alternative. Some of the feedback we got from the community and from stakeholders along there was there's a lot happening on that intersection or in those streets, and closing it down. However, we know that that is still a route, and so we wanted to make sure that that route was still a viable alternative. Moving from Arts Center Way east towards Peachtree Street, again, we're continuing with the buffered lit lanes protection, both eastbound and westbound. Through here, we wanted to preserve and consolidate some of the loading bay and drop-off zones that are there today on the south side of 15th Street. We also have worked with MARTA and had discussions with them on their needs for that drop-off of MARTA station at the MARTA bus stop. Diving into the 15th Street and Peachtree Street intersection, we have discussed a little bit about how to move bikes through Peachtree, across Peachtree Street. And this is really a tight point through here. So there's a couple alternatives we have for folks heading eastbound. Currently, the way we are showing it today is a facility that's protected that would merge into the vehicle travel lane and stage with a bike box here. We've also looked at a sidewalk level facility that moves through here. This option shown here, bikes would go with the vehicles and there'd be a 2-stage movement as needed for Peachtree Street. Westbound, bikes would ramp up to sidewalk facility. Again, this is all within the right of way, and wait for a leading pedestrian signal, and they would go with the pedestrians to cross Peachtree Street. They would come across Peachtree Street and exit back into the dedicated lane. All right, now we're getting to some of the good stuff. So the Peachtree Street to Peachtree Circle, the concept you see for the intersection I will get to in a minute, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of key points through here. These black lines, as you see on the south side, are where the new curb extension is going with the Colony Square work. So that is extending the sidewalk and area out. This should help as vehicles exit, they would be able to have a bigger view of what's happening along the corridor as well. So as I mentioned, the potential for sharrows, we do have a pinch point here by the fountain. So eastbound, we would have a shared marking through this point as you're moving eastbound. Just like you do today, the bikes can use the vehicular lane, and that is the recommendation we have moving forward of the bikes using. So nothing's changed about that. They would enter and transition into the protected facility in this location right here. Westbound, again, the bikes would ramp up to sidewalk level and then stage at the intersection. So a couple big things to note as we kind of jump into the 15th and Peachtree Circle intersection. This was our initial stab at the design of the intersection. A couple of feedback we got early on was speed through the neighborhood, so some traffic calming was necessary. Also, queuing onto Peachtree Street going southbound, how do we begin to have some queuing for that? But the feedback we got from the community, and although this is a design that really simplifies the intersection, simplifies where all modes need to go, we heard back from the residents along the intersection that this was not preferred for various reasons, whether it was stopping in front of houses or just the reshifting of spaces. So we went back to the drawing boards and looked at how could we do a lighter touch and keep a lot of what is there today. So this is the lighter touch that we have developed. This, a couple things, it retains all existing stop signs. So currently you have 3 stop signs today, and that is our recommendation moving forward. What was interesting feedback was, as we were talking to some of the stakeholders, some of them didn't realize that there were 3 stop signs around the traffic, around the triangle. And I think that just goes to the wideness of the road, and that folks are looking in every different direction to move through the space. We also know that this north corner of the intersection, and I've labeled the intersections 1, 2, and 3, had the most pedestrian or the most crashes along the corridor. Specifically, I think there was 7 or 8 in the past 3 years, with 3 being serious. And that data, again, can be found in the existing conditions report. So we just definitely heard about the lighter touch. So some of the key elements that we put in place here was to have Peachtree Circle tie directly into 15th Street. We understand that this is the major movement based on our traffic analysis. These legs of 15th Street, so 15th Street is here as it comes to existing 15th Street, teeing that up a little bit. That way that intersection has direct view of where folks are coming from, and also providing, again, that legibility of where users should be in the corridor. At intersections 2 and 3, again, we tightened that up to provide that T intersection so that users know where folks are going to be. Part of the problem of moving through this intersection is it's wide open. There's a lot of potential conflict points. People roll through the stop signs when there's not a lot of folks there. So we really want to formalize some of these infrastructure components that are there today, like the stop signs, and then give other crossings for bikes and peds. So intersection 3 is also teeing into 15th Street. This configuration still keeps the movement into and out of the Colony Square area the same. It just gives you that bigger area to view. Coming out of this garage, you would be able to just look in 2 ways, as you do today, and bikes, peds coming through. So if you're moving eastbound, and I'm going to walk you through eastbound on a bike lane, or if you're walking, you'd be coming along Peachtree 15th Street, sorry. and you moving through, this would be stop controlled on the southbound leg. You would cross over, and you could either cross here at where the stop sign is today and transition over to Colony House, or you would go over a raised crossing. The raised crossing is in place because we know that there's a lot of movement that is happening, and we heard from residents of the need to cross across the island for whether it's dog walking in the triangle area or just movement through the space and their lack of pedestrian connections through the space. Bikes would do something similar. They would come across and move through here. The space around the triangle is for bikes and peds. It's a really low touch facility. So at this time, it is not sidewalk level, but it is protected facility. Again, bikes would move across the raised crossing and could go south or go westbound on 15th. Westbound bike lanes, again, would transition into the lit lane, and they could either move north or continue through as they would today, but in a buffered, protected area. So what does this look like? So the intersection, the raised crossing, this is an example of that. You can also locally down by Krog Street Market, there is a bike ped crossing that the Beltline has to date. So that is a great way to not only provide visibility for bikes and peds as they're crossing the road, but it's also a traffic calming measure as well. And again, the lighter touch around the triangle where you're going to have bikes and peds moving through the space would be something along these lines where you have some sort of protection here and a more robust protection at intersections to make sure that bikes and peds are protected from vehicle turns as we move through here. Parking would still be retained along Peachtree Circle and along Peachtree Circle here, but it would need to be removed where there were some spaces along here. Again, the parking along the island, we heard from residents that that was not a priority, but putting places for people to walk and cross was beneficial. So I'm going to leave Peachtree Circle and continue eastbound along the corridor. And not much is changing from what is currently on Peachtree Circle north of 15th Street. So it's just formalizing that connection. So lit lanes with a buffer and parking to remain along the corridor. We are looking at also tightening up the vehicle travel lanes so to help slow speed through the community. And you can see how bikes move through here. Once we get to Lafayette Street, again, we heard from folks about the lighter touch through there. So it's really just formalizing the connections of where bikes and peds should be. Again, they're kind of using the street along with vehicles today because there's no formalized crossings that are well established in the breadth of the Ansley Park Road. So really identifying where bikes and peds should be as they move through this space. And as you approach, we have the Piedmont Shared Use Path, which will be coming up along the east side of the road and then crossing. So we are going to provide a two-stage crossing further when you get to Piedmont to cross over and access that shared use pace. We are retaining the parking for the community over here, and then there were 2 parking spaces that we dedicated towards having the protected facility for those folks wanting to access Piedmont Park. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Puglisi with Jacobs, and he's going to walk us through some of the traffic and some of the options that we thought about for Peachtree Street and 15th and Peachtree Circle. So Chris?
Thank you, Addie. So we looked at some of the existing conditions on this block here between Peachtree Street and Peachtree Circle. There is queuing and congestion at the intersection with Peachtree Street. So we acknowledge that and we took that into consideration when looking at that intersection. We do know that the queuing in the afternoon spills back through the intersection with Peachtree Circle, which could complicate ingress and egress into the Colony Hanover House driveways. And then we also noticed a concentration of crashes at the Peachtree Circle intersection. There were 17 crashes in the 3-year period that we looked at, which is fairly high for this level of traffic volume and sort of residential character street. 3 of those crashes resulted in injuries, which is concerning, and 6 of them were angle crashes. Angle crashes are when turning vehicles collide with other vehicles. So we took that into consideration when helping crafting the concept. If you could advance the next slide. So by maintaining the cross section at Peachtree Street, we kept the same lane configuration. We kept the left turn bays. And then one thing that we are adding is a westbound left turn arrow at Peachtree Street to help with that queuing on the westbound approach. So that left turn phase through our analysis actually reduced queuing by about 1/3, which is pretty significant. So that should help navigating this area when entering and exiting the Colony Square driveway, but also just helping reducing congestion in Ansley Park. We also modified the geometry of the Peachtree Place intersection by really teeing up those intersections at 90-degree angles. Helps make for a safer area to cross. Also with the narrower lanes and speed calming elements, we anticipate that this design should experience fewer crashes and much easier to navigate around this area. It also provides an opportunity to have protected pedestrian and bicycle crossings. We also didn't introduce any new stop signs to this area, so traffic should flow through this area as it does today, just a lot safer.
Great, and just to close it out, some of the benefits, listing some of the benefits of this type of facility is the safe place for cyclists and micromobility users. Again, those users are already around the corridor, but providing a dedicated place where those vehicle users know where to find them, particularly around the 15th Street Peachtree Circle intersection. Improved pedestrian safety. It's really challenging to move across that one key intersection, 15th and Peachtree Circle, as a pedestrian or those that want to walk. So providing dedicated areas for those folks. Simplifying the intersection at Peachtree Circle, that T intersection, really providing kind of the self-enforcement of the stop signs that are there today, but really kind of getting those tighter so that folks need to stop and before they turn. Preserving on-street parking, we heard that was a key one. So along 15th Street, preserving that neighborhood on-street parking. Reducing congestion with the westbound left turn. I think that was something that we heard a lot about, was queuing and access into the garages. And slower vehicle speeds, the 3-way stops and narrow travel lanes for that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie for a Q&A.
Thanks, Addie, and thanks for going back over that. We've had several questions come in, and so I just want to let you all know that there's several tabs, so you can toggle between open questions and answered questions in the question and answer. Dan has been doing a good job of answering questions as they come through, so there's some dialogue going on there. With that, I also just want to highlight we are limited in our scope on this project. Midtown Alliance's borders kind of stop right around Peachtree Circle. So just wanted to highlight that for kind of ideas on traffic improvement or other needs in the Ansley Park area. Feel free to reach out to traffic@ansleypark.org. Just kind of wanted to throw that resource out there for y'all. All right, so Chris and Addie, one of the first questions we got in was a question about the numbers that we use to predict traffic patterns, how they, kind of what we used, and whether they'll apply post-COVID.
Chris, I'm going to turn this one over to you.
Yes, so we collected the traffic and traffic data in 2018 as part of the 15th Street extension project. So we studied the traffic in the area as part of that project. We forecasted the traffic out 10 and 20 years as part of GDOT's traffic analysis guidelines. We also included any proposed developments along the corridor that were anticipated. And at the time, Colony Square was one of those developments that was currently under construction when we were doing the analysis. So we did use pre-COVID data and forecasted it out accordingly.
Excellent, thanks. And a lot of that information can be found in the existing conditions report that's linked in on our website. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about why we chose not to put the cars next to the curb and then the bike lane instead of kind of the other orientation, Addie?
Sure, I'm happy to speak about that. And Tom Natwick, our senior engineer, too, feel free to weigh in. We know that currently, as it stands today along Peachtree Circle, this is the condition you have where you have the vehicle travel lanes, then the bikes, and then the parking. So in order for consistency, we wanted to maintain that as well. We did have some discussions internally about putting the bikes against the curb and to be buffered by parking. That is actually something that we would prefer, but that direction didn't map out once we kind of got into design and started talking with some folks about what they wanted to see along the corridor. Tom, did you have any additional insight on that?
I'll just add that with the large number of driveways on each side, we would lose a significant amount of parking to provide a safe facility with site distance. So that was another consideration that would make it harder from a parking standpoint.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah, so kind of that decision goes back to weighing the needs of everyone in the community and just kind of hearing what people need out of this street. Excellent. Dan, this one might be one that you could weigh in on. We've had several questions about Piedmont and 15th Street and how folks are planning to, or will be able to cross that intersection in the future.
Yeah, so as part of, so as we've mentioned, there's a lit lane or a bike lane project that comes northbound on Piedmont and terminates at 15th. And as part of a separate project, we're going to add a pedestrian hybrid beacon, basically a pedestrian signal that would get you across Piedmont at 15th Street, where there's not a signal today. And that would provide a safe crossing for people on foot, people on bike, people on scooter.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so we've got a question about induced demand. Will the left turn arrow heading west from 15th onto Peachtree just make it a more attractive cut through? And I think maybe Chris or Addie can speak to kind of improving the efficiency of that intersection and all the different phases that we're adding.
Chris, do you want to weigh in? And then I'll piggyback.
I mean, any sort of improvements to operations can be more attractive. And so I think there's larger issues outside of the context of this project to address cut through traffic through Ansley Park. Addie, do you want to?
No, I think that's spot on. I mean, part of our effort here was hearing about the queuing of the turn onto Peachtree Street and how do we begin to think about that differently. And then also, you know, raising the question of, you know, cut through traffic. We do understand that Ansley Park has a lot of cut through traffic. The great thing about it though is that you have a lot of entries and exits of Ansley Park, and that spreads the load out quite a bit from what we've seen. Also with the looking at the lighter touch around the 15th Street Peachtree Circle intersection, it makes it a lot less convenient. You can still go through it, but you're going through on the neighborhood's terms. So stopping kind of the configuration of that, it's not the kind of quick through as before.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as a team on this project, what we're really trying to do is make space for everyone to move through as efficiently as possible and as safely as possible. There's not much, you know, we have control over the changes at Colony Square and all of that. So this project's goal is to make things safer and more efficient. So we have a question here about the number of bikers projected per day that are using the route or will be using the route, and I guess kind of how we came to those numbers.
I think Chris can answer this, but we were looking at a comparable, which was the 5th Street bike facility and the number of users on that. And I think it breaks down to 1 bike every 4 minutes would be the average amount of users we would see. Chris, did you have any kind of additional? I know that was just over the course of the day, but what that looked like peak.
Yeah, so we looked at 10th Street, which, you know, is obviously a more popular route that connects the Beltline to Midtown. And we also looked at 5th Street and we looked at Peachtree Street as well. And so going by 5th Street, we're looking at sort of average daily volumes in that general range, where a bike or two every few minutes. So it wasn't, you know, a overly congested bicycle facility.
Excellent, thanks. We've got, really are a lot of questions about Piedmont and 15th. We definitely know that this is an important intersection to the neighborhood. We do keep our project pages as up to date as possible. So, you know, please keep checking in there. Dan, I don't know if there's anything else you kind of want to add to that end, but they sure are rolling in about that intersection.
Yeah. Yeah, I just was reading a couple more. So yeah, so the detail on that is it's part of that signal is part of a project with 5 or 6 other signals in Midtown and other intersection improvements. That project has gone out to bid through the city's procurement process twice, and the city has canceled both bids due to errors by the bidders. So we are working towards a 3rd procurement, the city is, I should say, for that project, and hopefully 3rd time's a charm. But the design is done, the plans are approved. It literally just we have to procure a construction contractor to build it. And that is challenging sometimes, particularly now with construction costs and the amount of work. So we're crossing our fingers. We know it's a need.
Yeah, we're excited about moving forward with that. So few questions in here about kind of community engagement. So one of the biggest pieces of community engagement we've done over the past year was our community survey. We heard from over 5,000 visitors and residents in Midtown. And one of the most requested things was more and improved LIT connections. And so, you know, that's been a big piece of kind of understanding that these are a larger community desire. Beyond that, you know, our community engagement has included as many stakeholders as we can get along the corridor. So Woodruff Art Center, the Cousins properties along 15th Street, MARTA, Colony Square. We've worked with Ansley Park and Colony and Hanover House, trying to hear everybody's concerns. and do the best we can to that end.
And the New Hampton Inn
And the New
and
Hampton
MARTA.
Thank you, thank you. You know, the wider community really seems to be looking for more and easier connections and ways to move around. And so that's really the type of, those are the facilities that we're hoping to continue to provide. Sorry. So there's a question in here, Addie, about kind of the steep incline in between Art Center Way and Peachtree.
Sure.
And just kind of more understanding of exactly what that facility looks like and how people move from Art Center into the bike lane.
And I'm gonna turn it over to Tom. I'm gonna move up here.
I think the other thing they're trying to figure out is exactly how folks will move with the MARTA buses on 15th Street coming in and out of their stops.
Sure. Tom, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. I think for both westbound and eastbound between Art Center Way and Peachtree Street, the lane users will be separated, but there will be a point for eastbound where we'll be providing enough sight distance, but there will be a merge point. And so we'll stop the parking for the eastbound direction where you can see the existing loading bay early enough so that it's comfortable enough given the existing speeds or potential speeds of bus or vehicles so that you can enter the facility there or enter the travel lane into a shared travel lane. And then westbound, it'll be the similar condition, but it's still separated as well. Did I miss anything on that question?
I think and I can't remember where it is, was the question about what happens if a MARTA bus is loading and unloading at that location? How the bikes respond and the bikes, they would stop.
Yeah. If the bike's behind you, yeah.
The lit lane users will be obligated to stop, and we'll have signage and pavement markings to indicate that to yield to pedestrians and anybody getting on or off the bus. So that would be a yield point for bikes and scooters. And we really want to reinforce that, given it'd be a sort of a constrained bus stop by definition.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, so wondering if there will be a left turn phase at Peachtree heading west.
So we did recommend a signal upgrade to include a westbound left turn phase exiting Ansley Park from 15th Street onto Peachtree Street. That's a heavy demand for vehicles. And so by giving them dedicated time, it will help with the queuing, but also it will be safer for pedestrians and cyclists crossing on that southern leg as well, because the left turners will have their own dedicated time to do so.
Yeah, I think that dedicated start is really going to be helpful in that pinch point. Again, what we are kind of trying to weigh is the need to create a safe facility and also the need to implement these facilities in an efficient manner. And so in this pinch point, the design is kind of trying to avoid having to acquire more right of way. So this was the preferred facility. So we've got a question about considering a flashing signal at the Colony House driveway. This is something that we've discussed. However, relying on a flashing signal to get in and out of a driveway isn't always isn't preferred. If there's something that doesn't work, it breaks, that could lead to a dangerous conflict. And so what we would prefer to do is to create traffic patterns that are predictable, where there's a space for everyone to be, and allow space for people to be able to see who's coming and going around them, so that we're not relying on things that can be faulty.
I would just add, I mean, I think the overall concern there, and we've definitely heard from Colony House and Hanover House about, you know, being able to get in and out of the driveway safely for the people in the car, but also the pedestrians and the people on bikes and scooters. And so we definitely hear that concern, and we're going to, you know, put pen to paper again and give it some additional thought about, you know, other opportunities to improve that condition. We think that, you know, the moving of the curb by Colony Square is going to help with sight lines. We think some of the design features that we've installed will also help this, but we're going to look at other measures. I mean, you know, one other thought could be, you know, the driveway becomes a right in, right out. So that reduces the number of places that, you know, drivers need to look, the number of conflict points and things like that. I know that's not an ideal solution for drivers. And so we want to try to find something that, you know, works well for everyone. And it's challenging with the number of driveways here and the different movements, but we're going to keep looking at it.
Thanks, Dan. Got a question about timeline here, and, you know, trying to understand kind of what the steps are. It's right now we're only funded through design, and so you know, difficult to put an exact timeline on how long a facility like this would take to implement. Certainly we'll keep everybody up to date as we move forward through this process, and understanding that there's a lot of changes going on. And I think that, you know, we feel, given all the changes in the area and the different use cases coming through, it's going to be more important than ever to design a facility that helps people move safely through this area. Sorry, I'm just trying to. So Addie, maybe we can go back to 15th and Peachtree and just kind of go over how we thought through folks moving through this intersection in terms of getting up the hill and having to yield to the buses, as well as moving into the shared situation on the sidewalk of Peachtree and 15th Street, instead of going into the car traffic with.
Yeah, the answer is yes. And I'm going to have Tom kind of piggyback on here. We looked at several ideas of how to navigate through the Peachtree Street intersection, knowing it's a complicated and there's a lot of vehicle volume, east-west, north-south moving through here. And how do you begin to do this? We originally started of, can we do dedicated bike signals or a bike phase? But one of the impacts of that was a lot of vehicular delay through that intersection. So Moving eastbound or westbound, I'll start here, coming up is to stage with the pedestrians. So it would be a leading pedestrian interval. So pedestrians and bikes would get to go ahead before vehicular movement crosses. So they would come over, they would cross here, have a mixing zone, and then enter the facility here. We did explore the bikes coming into the lane, into the vehicle travel lane, and then entering into the dedicated lit lane facility. But to some earlier points about kind of the incline and getting that speed going through there, we felt like this was a better option for that as well. Westbound, we did explore, and it's something that we could look at again, is definitely getting the peds or the bikes up to sidewalk level through this piece, and then crossing with a leading pedestrian interval, crossing over and into a shared lane with vehicle lane through here. Again, this is a pinch point, so providing that dedicated space was a challenge, especially since we didn't want to move curb, to have a shared space here. There was some questions about phasing of getting folks to be able to go north on Peachtree Street, but it's something that we're going to flesh out through this schematic design. Tom, did you have any kind of additional thoughts you wanted to just talk about at this intersection?
I think you captured it. I think a few iterations we had explored a separate bike phase, but it was impractical given the existing conditions of the signal and the phasing. And so we reworked it based upon the proposed phasing or expected phasing that will produce in the schematic design phase. Everything else though.
Thanks, y'all. As of right now, I believe we have answered all the questions that have come through that we can answer. So I'm going to leave this up. If anybody has last minute thoughts or questions that they want to get the team to answer, please shoot them our way.
And I will say too about the MARTA bus stop, we had a discussion with them earlier on about the potential for shifting the bus stops, and that is something that, you know, as we go back to them again, is having that discussion on, is there possibility for that stop to shift? I think what they found is folks didn't want to walk uphill, so that was a pickup place, but can that happen in other places? They seemed open to that idea.
Great question from Robin, asking how stakeholder input will work from here on out. So we aim to keep in close contact with everybody who is interested in this project. We keep our project pages up to date, so check out the Midtown Alliance website, and you can find kind of up-to-date information about this project. You can shoot email to me about 15th Street specifically. My email is julie@midtownatl.com. I will do my best to answer the question or find someone who can. We will continue to come back to the community as plans evolve. And I think, you know, one of the things we're trying to do is have this community input up front so that we can move quickly once funding is identified. And the hope is being able to implement projects in a more efficient way in the future. We have a few questions that kind of pertain, or one question that pertains to the, I think the traffic flow in and out of the Colony Square parking deck. Based on our conversations with Colony Square, the traffic patterns going in and out of the deck along 15th Street will not be changing. Midtown Alliance doesn't have anything to do with what goes on inside the parking deck itself, but we've been told that those traffic patterns are going to be remaining the same. So a concern about bikes and scooters and peds sharing space at lights and kind of the potential safety risks for pedestrians. Definitely have heard those concerns. We do have a few use cases throughout the city that make it, have demonstrated that this is an efficient way to handle intersections. 10th and Monroe is a great example, but we see many of the crossings on the Beltline where people share space. And then along Centennial Olympic Park, they converted part of that walkway into shared space. And these situations work well, speeds stay low, and people navigate through as they need. So it definitely gives us the opportunity to separate people on bikes and on feet from people in cars, and provide the opportunity for people to get through the intersection safely. So that's the goal there. Okay, just trying to get through the last few of the questions that are trickling in. Question about the hazards of on-street parking. We heard loud and clear from the community that maintaining the on-street parking along 15th Street was critical. I know that within Ansley Park, there's been some conversations about permitting those spots and things like that. That's beyond the scope of what Midtown Alliance handles. But, the Ansley Park Neighborhood Association has been working on those conversations. All right, so seems like questions have been wrapped up. Again, please feel free to reach out to me with any additional questions. Keep an eye on our project page. Midtown Alliance also has Instagram and Facebook, and we do updates via social media as well whenever there's big announcements. I really appreciate everyone who has contributed to the discussion and asked great questions. And we look forward to sharing with everyone as plans evolve. So thank you everybody for attending.